Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get it on. No choice but to get on. And mandate you get it on. Thanks for tuning in. And thanks for sharing. We're staying with you during this uneasy time, and we hope you find a little comfort and solace with us. Right, Gina Grad?
That is correct.
Handball, Brian?
Go home and get your fucking shine box.
Oh, God. One of the best scenes of all time in any movie, and because it's always the quiet tension is always the best. People always like the yelling and the explosions, but it's the simmering tension that is the best. And that scene in Goodfellas, Michael Imperioli obviously was Spider, right? And
that's right.
All right, let's see. Let me click on my stuff. I had things. I talked to Byron Allen's people yesterday. They're putting together this big star-studded Eddie Murphy blah 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 thing, you know, comedy, big primetime comedy at home, staying at home comedy special. So I'm going to be doing something for that.
They wanted Kimmel's number?
Actually, Kimmel probably gave me my number and told him not to bother him. So I've been working on some ideas and some vignettes and some bits with that. I think it's going to air on maybe NBC on May 10th, as they said.
Wow,
and,
that's a week and a half.
I know, but I had the conversation with Byron Allen's people yesterday, and I was like, "When are we going to do this?" And they're like, "May 10th." And I'm like, "Okay." And I started thinking, that's fast. And then I said, "So when do you want me to do my bit or whatever? Like, how are we going to do my bit?" And they were like, "I figured maybe this Friday." And I was like, "This Friday?" And I was like, I thought it was May 10th. And they're like, no, it airs May 10th. We get all the bits in and they get edited and all that stuff. And then I thought, wow, that's right.
Yeah.
I should have known that. I've been in show business long enough to understand how
just
those
whip
things
something
work.
up.
Yeah. So I'm going to work something out. We'll keep you posted on that. I had an interesting discussion earlier today for CarCast. I was talking to Jim Farley. He's the COO of Ford. I think he's related to Chris Farley, which is kind of interesting. And they kind of look alike, and they even seem about the same, or maybe they would have been about the same age. I'd be curious. But anyway, they're cousins. And anyway, it was funny. It was like, this guy's running Ford now, but we started talking to him, and he said, well, Ford is revamped to making masks for hospitals, and they're using the guys who make the airbags. They have all their subcontractors. Right. You know, when you make a car, you make a lot of the car, but many things are subcontracted out. And the guys who make the airbags are able to make the hospital gowns now because they know how to sew material and so on and so forth.
Makes sense.
Nice.
And I was looking down, and they expect to produce 50,000 ventilators within the next 100 days.
Good.
And they also can produce 30,000 a month thereafter. And face shields, masks, reusable gowns, air purifying equipment, blah, blah, blah. And then I said, and then what? Like, how did it work? And he said, it didn't. Like, we called FEMA, we called everybody, and the government, they're like, I don't know, what do you want to do with this stuff? So they started calling all the hospitals saying, what do you need? We'll deliver it to you. We're looking at a picture of him now. He doesn't
There's
look
a
like
similarity.
Chris Farley.
The eyes.
That dude lives in a van down by the river.
That's right. So I started kind of thinking about it, and then I realized one of my good buddies from high school, Chris Harden, not my other friend, Chris. Chris played on the baseball team, the football team, one of the few guys who actually got out of high school. I was friends with him, went to college, went to the Air Force Academy. He's been working at Budweiser, the Budweiser plant in Van Nuys, a big Budweiser plant there right next off the 405 there for a million years. He'd been there for like 35 years. And he said, we're making hand sanitizer.
Right?
Yeah, that's right.
And so I was like, oh, and so I was just sort of talking to him about it. And I was talking to Farley about it too. And I said to my buddy Chris, I go, how hard was it to streamline the process? You have to get all the governmental agencies to whatever. And he said, it was a little slow at the beginning, but then we kind of called them and said, hey, we're trying to do something here. We're trying to make hand sanitizer. We can't have this slow boat route that you put everyone on where you don't call anyone back and you have to pull a bakery ticket and wait in line. And then they got it kind of fast tracked. And now they're making hand sanitizer and Ford is doing whatever Ford is doing. And I started thinking, I'm a big fan of industry and with some regulations, but not roadblocks. You know what I mean? Like, look, it's wartime. Ford is not going to make, it's not going to make ventilators that pull your lungs out and kill you. And Budweiser's not going to make hand sanitizer where the fumes are noxious and knock you out. Like, first things first, I trust them to do what they're doing. Number one. Number two, let's just get out of the way a little bit and help them move along. And we see how fast we move and how good we go when I don't really trust the government to build anything or make anything. It's funny. I was having this thought as I was driving back from the shop, and I took a couple of pictures of the dirt mounds that the government's been working on for the last 7 years. I sent them to Chris. They had a couple of guys. The first shot was just a shot of nothing. It's just weeds and dirt, and it's been that way for 10 years. And then the second shot I took was like guys were working on the
Standing
dirt.
on the weeds and dirt.
Moving the dirt.
But they've been there for 10 years. Like, look, they're not good at doing stuff, which is fine. Let Ford and Budweiser do everything, but also don't get in Ford and Budweiser's way. You have to clear out a little bit. Like, it's okay, fine. It's like saying, we got a kid on the crew team. He's missing an arm and he's severely disabled emotionally. Fine. He won't be rowing. Don't drag in the water and punch other guys in the back of the head who are rowing.
The Winklevoss twins.
Get them a cup of Gatorade. Just help them along. That's what I'm saying.
And to your point, these giant titans of industry who want to help shouldn't have to beg the government to let them help.
Right.
Aren't you asking for help?
What's everyone saying? We're all in this together. Well, let's prove it. Let's all be in this together. We're trying to help.
Begging you to give you this stuff.
Yeah. So they got it. They streamlined it and they figured it out and they whatever did. But what I'm kind of saying is maybe when this whole thing is over with and some other company or Budweiser or Ford are talking about doing something, maybe we could streamline that process a little bit, seeing as how it might create some jobs and feed some families. All right. Oh, it's called Feeding America Comedy Festival. It's May 9th. Is it May 9th?
Date just keeps moving up.
May 10th to me. Who's in the lineup, Max Spada?
All right, so organized by Byron Allen. It's going to feature Eddie Murphy, Adam Sandler, Chris Rock, Billy Crystal, Tiffany Haddish, Kevin Hart, Kenan Thompson, Howie Mandel, John Lovitz, Caroline Ray, Taraji P. Henson, and a lot more.
I just signed on. Like 10 minutes ago. I just signed on.
Some of these press releases were from last week, so I mean they're updating this thing.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll be checking.
He's the lead guest.
I read one that said a lot more and Adam Carolla.
Oh,
I was like, couldn't they just put me in a lot more?
Well, I know you take a back seat to famed stand-up comedian Taraji P. Henson.
Well, speaking of back seats, it is interesting. Somebody sent me a tweet, and it is telling. Like you know where you're at, which is they sent me a tweet of a promo, like kind of extended dance promo, like a 2.5 minute promo for Jay Leno's Garage, coming this season on Jay Leno's Garage. And then they always do that thing where they're like Charlie Sheen and Tim Allen and all. They went through about 18 celebrities, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, I think I'm on Jay Leno's Garage this year. I don't remember getting mentioned.
That's me and more.
Yes, but the reason they sent it along to me is because in the clip, it appears that one of the segments in Jay Leno's garage coming up this season. And my segment, I raced Jay Leno at Fontana in Z cars in an actual race. But this is Jay Leno teaches Norm MacDonald to drive.
Oh,
Stop
dastardly.
it. You stop it right now.
I know. That was me. That was mine. God damn it. What if, do you think Norm MacDonald pitched him that one? Because I'm going to be pissed if he pitched that one.
You've got to get to the bottom of this. This is egregious.
Norm's like, I had a great idea. Someone famous teaches me to drive.
God damn it. So,
Oh
anyway.
my God.
Yeah,
brutal.
I don't know if I want to tune in or boycott. I have so many mixed emotions because I want to see this more than anything.
Well, we'll see how it goes, but that's coming up. We have a clip, I believe, from my audiobook that Dawson's going to set up. What do we have, Dawson? Oh, is Dawson there?
I don't. Oh yeah, I see his name on there.
Okay, let's see.
I'm here. I'm sorry. I've had a mouse trouble.
Do we have Chris? Do we have a clip that we're going to play? You want to set it up?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Is it
Chris.
on there? Oh, sorry. Is it on the screen? Go ahead.
Which one are we going to do?
I don't know, Chris. What do you want to do
On the
here?
screen, I have San Francisco language.
All right,
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
seeing it on the screen, but I don't think so. But all right.
All right.
It's there.
Here. Oh, there.
At the top.
Oh,
Second
see,
to
my
top.
screen is formatted a little bit different. So when people, I think when people see it on Chris's screen, or when Chris sees it on Chris's screen, it sometimes is off of my screen.
Ah.
I see everyone freeway pictures. That's at the top of mine. All right,
So
here
Oh,
we go.
yes,
Go
wow.
ahead. There we go.
As I'm
go ahead.
producing this audiobook, I'm going through the second edit and polishing everything up, and I am laughing my ass off. And I've heard the book 3 times now, once live and then twice in edit, and I'm still laughing so hard. This is wonderful. This little piece is about how, especially the city of San Francisco, is changing their language.
The San Francisco area is the tip of the spear, a term I'm sure someone will find offensive when it comes to the change the language to feel good bullshit. The San Francisco Board of Supervisors recently changed the language they use in meetings and documents so that the convicted felons are now referred to as justice-involved persons. Parolees are now returning residents. And an addict is now referred to as a person with a history of substance abuse. So, on your next trip to San Fran, you can look forward to a person with a history of substance abuse who is a returning resident after being justice involved, relieving you of your wallet at the ATM while a helping friendly patrol person, formerly known as a police officer, is busy with the used-to-be homeless, now non-housed person who was a babbling schizophrenic, but now is known as a non-reality bound citizen. Just to be balanced, there is a right-leaning version of this too. Gun guys. Unlike masturbators, they're not quiet about their hobby. They want everyone to know they love guns, and that includes correcting you on your firearm faux pas. To all my NRA member fans reading this, I don't know, nor do I give a fuck about the difference between a clip and a magazine. This whole language correction thing is retarded. Yes, I used the word fucking intentionally. As a car guy, I'm offended by the attack on the word retarded. In a car, you either advance or retard the engine timing. It simply means to slow something down. Being mentally retarded means your mental growth was slowed down. As if calling someone developmentally delayed makes a fucking difference in the misery that condition causes to the person and their family. I got some pushback from a previous publisher about using the term, but I did not let her retard me in my use of the word retard. That would make me retarded. Out of curiosity, I did a word search and found that the retard count from my previous books is 52. So with this paragraph, I just got it up to an even 60. All right. Dan Crenshaw is coming on at in the second half. He's a very interesting guy. He's the Navy SEAL with the patch on his eye who went on SNL. One of the first things I liked about Dan Crenshaw, I had no idea who Dan Crenshaw was, although I think I may have, because was he on Take a Knee in February 2018? Did I talk to him over the phone? And I didn't know I was talking to that Dan Crenshaw? Or does Kaylin sometimes put stuff on the bio that doesn't belong?
Why can't both be true?
Yes, but
I think they can both, but it is kind of a problem sometimes when it's happened in the past. Max Spada, Dan Crenshaw.
Yeah, you talked to him. Take a knee.
Oh,
2018.
okay, good. All right. I didn't even know who I was talking to back then, or I blocked it out of my brain. But anyway, I was probably on the phone with him and couldn't see him like we're doing it now. Or maybe, no, I wouldn't know if he was in studio if he had a patch on. Anyway, Dan Crenshaw went on SNL, and Pete Davidson made fun of him, and he's kind of making fun of him looking like a creepy porn director or something with the eye patch. And turns out the guy's a hero and as a Navy SEAL and stepped on a landmine and it blew his eye out and blah, blah, blah. And then he went on there. And he was totally magnanimous about the whole thing. Had a good sense of humor about it. I was kind of in on the joke. Didn't really get all sanctimonious or anything. And I thought, I like that guy. That's how you should handle. You should handle this kind of stuff that way. Have a sense of humor. All right, Michael Imperioli is ready.
Bringing him in right now.
He is on. Well, he's got a podcast called Talking Sopranos. It's available.
I'm on episode
now.
3.
On Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. Steve Sharippa is his co-host on that too. Michael, you on or is he on?
He's here.
Is he?
I see him. I don't hear him.
You don't hear me?
I don't see him.
There he is. We hear you now.
You hear me? Okay.
Still don't. There he is. Hey, what's going on, man?
How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. Where are you at?
I'm in Santa Barbara.
Oh, that's a good place to be.
Yeah, not bad.
Not a bad place. Yeah. I was in New York from September till March 1st. And then I got here. And then I was supposed to go back to New York end of March. And I've just been here ever since.
We'll talk about the podcast. And I guess we'll talk some Sopranos as well. What happened to the Sopranos feature? What's the status of that?
It was supposed to be released in September, and now it's been moved to March. But it's finished. It's in the can. So I guess I think a lot of the theatrical releases are all getting pushed back because
right. So it's due to come out in a little less than a year.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And can we talk a little about what's in that movie? I mean, I know you can't give away stuff, but how much of how much can we talk about?
I don't know much about it because I'm not involved in it.
You're not involved at all in it?
It's a prequel.
No.
It's a prequel.
Oh.
It's a young Tony Soprano played by his son.
Yeah, and I think the main character is Dickie Moltisanti, who is my character's father. So there may be my character as a baby in the movie. I don't know, but yeah. But the main character I think is played by Alessandro Nivola, and he plays Dickie Moltisanti.
Wow. I did not. I now I remember it's a prequel and blah, 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 but I still didn't know who all was in and who all was out. So Sopranos, where can we see the Sopranos now? Where's it streaming?
Streaming for free on HBO Go. Actually, they've been streaming a lot of their classic shows for quarantine for people.
It's crazy.
I guess it's a public service for people, I guess.
It's crazy because Sopranos is a classic show. I mean, it's classic by virtue of it's great, but it's not that old. You know, it's like even classics is like, something from the way back in the day. But Sopranos fits the bill.
Yeah, and oddly, and one of the reasons why we're doing a podcast, in the last year and a half, I noticed a whole other generation becoming obsessed with the show, like late teens, 20s, early 30s, who were too young when it was first on, who have discovered it on streaming and are binging it. Like, when it first came out, you couldn't binge watch it. You had to wait till Sunday and watch it, with Sunday night at 9. And, but I get a lot of social media, communication from very young people, which is really interesting, from all around the world too.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we all had that relationship with sitcoms and I Love Lucy and the Three Stooges and stuff that they just repurposed. All the cartoons. I mean, half those Saturday morning cartoons were stuff from the 40s and the 50s and 60s, and they just kept re-airing it, and it was brand new to us. I have kids, my 13-year-old twins, they've been all the way through Friends. My son's all the way through. They're all the way through The Simpsons. I mean, it's still ongoing. The Family Guy. I had them both sit down and watch The Wire when they were 5. Tired. And I imagine that they will then get on to The Sopranos pretty soon. That'll be probably one of their next ones. Michael, I'm just looking down here. I'm just jumping around. Avid practitioners of Taekwondo, you and your family. Is that true?
Yeah, we all started together the 4 of us started around 2002. And then my youngest started a few years after that. And now the 2 youngest don't practice anymore, but my wife and I still do. And my oldest went back to it as she's almost 30 now. Yeah.
Talk about what that does for you and how that works for you.
Well, at the time, it was during The Sopranos, and I was smoking a pack or more cigarettes a day, drinking a lot, and not exercising. I didn't exercise for years, literally. And my kids started doing it, and I met the instructor, Grandmaster Kang, who has a great studio in Tribeca, New York, TKT. And I met him, and I really liked him, and just the kind of person he was. So I tried it, and it stuck, really, and it just, I did it more as a physical, to get back into exercise, but it led to me getting into eating healthier, and it led to meditation in a way, just because I liked, when you do martial arts, you can't really think of anything else. Like I also, sometimes I'll do a treadmill or elliptical or something, but my mind's all over the place. And
yes,
but Taekwondo, it takes all your attention and focus. And I like that aspect of it, and kind of led to other things, like meditation and even Buddhism beyond that, although they're not really necessarily connected.
Yeah, we were talking about that over the last few shows about you can, jog on a treadmill or take a walk or something, but if you're still just kind of listening to the news feed or watching the news feed, it's not really going to serve its purpose. I mean, you'll burn some calories, but your brain will still kind of be fried from looking at graphics of body counts from COVID-19, But if you can get engaged in something where you can't really look away, I mean, the thing that's kind of liberating about any sort of sport where there's an opponent, or like I've always said, when you're driving a race car, there is no mind wandering anything.
Right.
If there's someone across from you on a mat, you don't drift off. It's impossible.
You're absolutely right. Even if you're if you're not sparring or actually doing it against someone, even if you're just doing, like the forms, which are like the katas, the rehearsed movements, and just that takes all your attention, to really do the technique properly and get through the workout. And it's more like, when I was a teenager, I did sports, like soccer was a big sport for me, and lacrosse, and street sports when I was younger, like football and baseball in the street. But even that takes all your attention. If you're really engaged in playing a game, man, that's it. Your mind's there. And I like that. It's fun.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think people are attracted to it, and then they're also scared of it. Anyone, even if you play in a couple of these like celebrity softball games or whatever, I remember playing in one in Chicago. There was like 30,000 people in the stadium, and I'm playing left field, and it's at night, and someone just hits some booming fly ball, and you're like drifting into into the night, and Jim McMahon crushes one, and it's going into the night air, and there's a whole bank of people along the third base line, and they're all yelling, "Don't drop it, don't drop it." And it's like every ounce of your attention is on that ball for that second, and it's exhilarating, but it's potentially devastating.
Yeah, and they're not going to be, if you drop it, they're not going to be forgiving because you're not a baseball player or anything.
Oh, you tried.
They're not going to. No. There's no credit for that.
They're all yelling, "Don't drop it," as you're like drifting into foul territory and screaming, "Hey man, show, where are the juggies?" So give us some, as someone who has transitioned from, pack-a-day smoker, not working out, not looking out for yourself, to a guy who's embraced the ancient wisdom of the Orient. What do you do? Give us a little thumbnail sketch of kind of your schedule, things you eat, things you work on, things you try to be conscious of.
Well, regular exercise, when I started, I was in 2002, I guess I was 36. Now I'm 54. So that there's a big difference physically who you are in your 30s and in your 50s. So I'm glad I started taking care of myself then, because I think that as you get older, the toll of not doing that just is bigger and bigger. So, there's just the health thing. And listen, shooting a TV show or a movie, they're long days, 12, 14-hour days. And you need that stamina. You need to be physically fit. It's usually the stuff I do often has an element of chasing or chasing the bad guys or running away from the cops, one or the other. I'm usually doing one or the other. So, and also you have to be physically fit enough to be present after 12 hours if you're doing a big heavy scene and there's a close up and it's the money shot and you have to deliver. So there's a lot of benefit in being healthier. I've been meditating for, I guess, the last 12 years. And that's a good way, I think, to start to get a sense of how your mind works and how you respond to stressors and, things in life that can push you over the edge and maybe give you a bit of a delay when dealing with them,
Can we, I'll jump to a subject, the Spider, Goodfellas, those scenes in the bar, the club. It's one of the most memorable, kind of iconic scenes, really, for me in movie making history. Did you know what you had when you were doing it? I mean, you probably couldn't have known all of what you had when you were shooting it, but did you have an inkling? And then how did you even get there?
Well, I knew what it was for me. I was 23. I had been trying to get work for years as an actor. I had done a couple of little things in movies. I'd been studying for a long time, but for me, it was like going from the minors to Yankee Stadium in the World Series, to be with De Niro and Scorsese, because they were heroes of mine as a New York kid who wanted to be an actor. So after those 2 days, it was a success for me because they were all happy and they felt that Marty felt like he got what he wanted, whether or not it was going to stay in the movie, whether or not it was going to be a good movie, whether or not the scenes were going to be interesting. I had no idea, but for me, it was like, arriving to the big leagues, basically.
Do you have any specific memories, encounters, discussions with whomever, Pesci, De Niro, or Scorsese, anything from those things?
I had done 3 movies before then, right? One was the first one was a big Hollywood movie called Lean on Me with Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
Directed by John Avildsen, who did Rocky. And I had one line. Oh, yeah. The line was, "Hey, I'm going to be a star," which got cut because I was so bad. Because I was terrified. I'd never been in front of a camera before. I'd been on stage and I had been in classroom actor and stuff, but I'd never been in front of a movie camera. And he didn't have a lot of patience. There was like 500 kids in the auditorium, high school kids who get, it was about a high school.
Mhm.
And, there were a lot of kids in the scene with me, and he had no patience for me. And I did it once, and I mumbled because I was nervous. And he's like, hey, if you don't give me something on that line, you're out of here. And which is terrible to hear on your first movie,
He's known as the king of the underdogs.
Yeah, there I am. See,
Oh
I am
my
in the
God, look at
denim
you.
vest.
We're looking
Right by
at
Morgan
you, yeah.
Freeman's right
Hard to
hand.
miss.
Right.
Oh, this is when he kicked the whole
He
group. In the
kicked-
group,
I-
he kicked you out of school. Yeah.
Yeah,
All the
I was
bad
the bad white kid, basically.
The one.
But so when then I did 2 little things in 2 indie movies that nobody saw, and then I got cast in Goodfellas. And when I got to the set, I met Marty at the audition, and he was really nice. And then when I got on the set, he couldn't have been nicer. Like, he treated me like I was one of the stars of the movie. Like, comes right up to me, if you need me, I'm in the trailer. And we started talking about, and the wardrobe person put me in like a waiter suit, and he said to the wardrobe, no, this is not a legitimate establishment. He's not wearing a tie and a shirt. It's a social club. And he just included me in everything. And he said, one thing I'll ask of you is to treat the actors on and off camera like the characters, which for me made it very liberating, because I didn't have to be this intimidated young actor with, my heroes and stuff. I could just be this guy who's there to serve them, and take care of the table. So what I did was, and I don't know why I did this. I just had this instinct. In hindsight, I probably never would have done it after I became much more, after I became more professional. I went to the prop guy and I said, I want to reset the props, the table, the drinks and all that stuff. I want to reset it between takes. Like, I want to handle the table. And Marty said, yeah, that's a good idea. Let him do that. And then they actually had the bottles where my character's making the drinks turned away from the table. And I said, no, you have to put the bottles in front. So if I'm making a drink, I can watch them all the time. So I can be attentive to their needs. And they did that, which in the moment seemed normal. But when I look back, that's a really ballsy thing, but in the moment I didn't think it was. I just was like, because he made me feel like I belonged there and it was time to play and have fun. And, I'm forever grateful for that.
But do you think that you would have thought to do that if he didn't say, you are this person, they're those people, and stay in that role or stay in that mindset? Because if you're in that mindset, you would be thinking, if I did work here, I would put the bottles here and I would do that. Do you think that subconsciously sort of gave you the courage to do that?
It was that, and it was his kindness, by making me feel welcome, by being patient and making me feel comfortable. Because when an actor feels tension, especially a young actor, because you're so vulnerable, you want to be a success and you want to be good and you want the director to like what you're doing. When there's tension, you close and you're not going to be creative and you're not going to follow impulses.
It's such a weird thing. I've always kind of felt that, you work with people that are high strung and they're tense and they're this and they're that. And they're kind of like, don't fuck this up now, act or go or read the prompt or whatever it is. And you're like, you're not going to get 1/10 out of me as good as you could have got if you said, hey man, have fun. If you fuck it up, we'll just go again. It's so much better to approach it that way, but there's still people that run it like the fucking great Santini's playing a basketball game, fucking elbow you and tell you to get out of the way and you're no good. And it's like, I just don't get it. I remember a million years ago, me and Jimmy and his cousin Sal were doing some big MTV live football halftime tailgate extravaganza. I think they let us go out there in like 2003 or something. And we went out to San Diego and we're doing this big sort of just MTV guys from the Man Show extravaganza. And like cousin Sal had to do something, and cousin Sal not really been on TV at that point. And Danny Two Sheets, these guys should all be Sopranos. Danny Two Sheets, Daniel Kelson was sort of drinking a beer and hanging out. He was saying to Sal, don't be nervous. It's only live in front of, 30 million people. Don't be nervous. It was like having a fun time with him because Sal busted balls, But I pulled Daniel aside. I was like, leave the guy alone. He's not used to being on TV. He might be freaked out by this. Like, don't do it.
Like Ralph Cramden when he did the commercial. Norton says, you just go on. The guy says you're on the air, and then millions of people will be looking at it. Nothing to worry about.
All right. You're going to hang out and do some news with us, Michael?
I'll do it. Yeah.
Let me hit Omaha Steaks, and then we'll do that. Stuck in. Oh, yes, you are. Time to stock up. Get some Omaha Steaks. They deliver the world's best steaks and a huge variety of family favorites. Without leaving your home, will come right to your door, nice and clean and fast. Right now, they got a limited time stock up sale just for our listeners. You can go to omahasteaks.com, enter Adam into the search bar, and unlock unique savings just for my listeners. I've been enjoying a lot of their offerings. I have my nanny Olga making me up. Had the steak with the chimichurri the other night. Had the mushroom burgers. All the recipes are online at omahasteaks.com, and you're going to get 50% worth of savings. You save 50% on your order when you put my name into the search bar, and free shipping on orders of over $69. Right, Dawson?
Never been a better time to stock up on Omaha Steaks. Stock up sale is going on right now with ready-to-ship packages. Save 50% or more, plus free shipping on orders of $69 or more. That's omahasteaks.com. Type Adam in the search bar.
All right, let's take a quick break. Oh, I'm just looking at a picture of Cousin Sal from the, I guess it was Raiders and Tampa Bay was that one? Yeah. Oh, we're looking at a picture. It's me, Jimmy, and Carson.
It was
Daly
the year that the Kimmel debuted, right? Because that was the year Tampa Bay won.
Yeah, we went down there. Tampa Bay beat the crap out of Oakland. Oakland had, I think, an offensive lineman go AWOL. Like
Barrett Robbins.
He had like mental issues, and he literally just went to Tijuana or something.
The day before the Super Bowl or something, he just kind of went AWOL, and that was the first domino to fall.
Yeah, and then we came back and launched Jimmy's show, and I think Warren Sapp flew on a helicopter from San Diego to Hollywood to be the lead guest on Jimmy's show. All right, so that was that. We'll walk down memory lane. All right, we'll take a quick break. Michael, hang with us, and we'll do news with Gina Grad right after this.
All right.
News with Gina Grad, breaking viral, all those crazy Trump tweets. Give me news with Gina Grad, trouble in the Middle East, celebrity drunk meltdowns. Need news with Gina Grad.
The news with Gina Grad.
Well, of course, there is a lot of news today, especially pandemic news, but I cannot miss this opportunity to speak with Mr. Imperioli this close and not ask you a question, if that's all right. I'm one of those crazy fan nerds that's seen the series 17 times, and we just finished it again recently, and the podcast is great. I've finished the second episode. I have the books. I'm a crazy person. My fiance, who's seen the show as much as I have, believes to his core that this show is not about the mafia. It's about children learning how to deal with the effect that parents with behavioral and personality disorders have on their children. And I know that everybody gets a different theme. I know you said on your podcast that one of the recurring themes is feeling underappreciated. Every character at some point talks about how they're underappreciated. So would you, A, care to validate him or break his heart? And B, what other themes do you think we might have missed in our 17 viewings?
I think he's really onto something. You know,
the
last show, the podcast we recorded, hasn't been released yet, but there's a scene when Livia's talking to Junior and basically is saying that her son needs to be killed. Without saying it. And I said, Steve, so she really wants her son dead. I said, that's so psychotic and fucked up, mentally, that it's bigger than anything else on the show in a weird way, thematically, So, and David did say that what he wanted when, the kernel, the seed of the show was about his relationship with his mother.
Right.
His mother was a very interesting character, not as extreme as Livia, but there were elements of that. He just, expanded on that. So I do think your husband is really onto something.
Oh, all his Christmases just
I'm
came
sorry
at once.
I
He's
said
gonna be
the
so
F word
happy.
because I used to say it on my podcast. I don't know if you allow
Oh,
it. So
please,
Cuss
by all
away.
means.
that's okay. All right. I'm
All
not
right.
a big cursor, but I just did it. Right?
Maybe the psychodynamic part of that series of The Sopranos, maybe that is what secretly attracted so many people who
Yeah.
didn't appear because if you said to most people look at mafia gangster movies kind of like they look at westerns. They go, not my genre.
Mhm.
Don't like westerns. But the Western guys don't like sci-fi. So
Right.
since when why would a majority maybe even of women love The Sopranos? Why is this so enticing to such a large and such a varied group of Americans? Everyone I knew loved it, and they didn't feel that way about westerns or sci-fis.
No.
That broke them off.
And to your point, almost every male character is equal parts lovable and despicable. Chrissy being at the very top of that list.
Right.
Yeah.
So
and the women are very strong characters in the
Yes.
show. I mean, even and because I haven't watched these episodes since they initially aired, so I'm on like episode 11 right now. I've watched 11, so I'm going week by week. Even you see Jamie Lynn Sigler's character Meadow, she's like a mob wife in training in a way. She's
Yes.
hardcore and tough. Like she doesn't give Christopher up when she buys drugs from him,
Yeah.
and she could have. And she's very honest with her father and bluntly asks him, is he in the mafia? And there's
She's
a
not afraid of him.
strength.
Yeah.
She's not afraid of like anything, it seems.
Yeah.
And Edie as well, when they have to stash, they know the feds are, gonna search the house, and they stash the guns and money and stuff. Edie's paves the way for that by going to the nursing home and getting rid of Livia.
Right. And she does such an incredible job of being both complicit and completely out of the loop by design at the same time. The whole show's a masterpiece.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I agree. Everyone agrees.
Yeah. It's the best.
I also am, I guess I'm pretty pure about it because I got on late, which is I got on, I don't know, season 3 or something and fell in love with it, which is different. A lot of people had been watching it, obviously been talking about it, been telling me to watch it. I just don't watch a series that often. But so I got onto it late, and it would have been easy to go, come on, what's everyone talking about? I told you. Like there's a part where you kind of want to be right when you don't go out and see something early on, but I was immediately hooked. Sorry, go ahead, Gina.
All right, let's do some news if we must. So the Center for Disease Control and Prevention now says we're supposed to practice social distancing from our family pets. It's official. We talked about the pug yesterday. We've talked about the zoo animals and the cats. Everybody already thinks their pet is their human family member, and scientists want us to extend that treatment with respect to this virus. Again, we talked about the cats, the dogs, the tigers. They are contracting COVID-19.
I fucking wrestled my fucking dog every fucking night.
Oh, you guys will be fine.
Every goddamn night.
Tuesday, the CDC released these new guidelines, and I quote, "Do not let pets interact with people or animals outside the household. Good luck to you, Adam. If a person inside the household becomes sick, isolate them from everyone, including pets."
Well, again, it's a good first world problem to have, while other countries are thinking about eating their pets. We're talking about getting maybe the ultimate social distancing in a bizarre way, actually eliminating the pet and consuming it. Ingesting the pet.
I got a little bit afraid because the big happy story, the big silver lining to this pandemic, this quarantine has been all the shelters are empty. Everybody's home. They want to adopt a new family member, a new pet. And now the shelters are cleaned out. And isn't that wonderful? Are these animals going to find themselves back at the pound now that the CDC is saying that?
I don't know, but if I can't go out with one of my friends and have a goddamn steak and a martini, I am going to eat someone's pet. I'm starting to get to that point now. The greatest love of my adult life was going out for a steak and a martini with a friend, and that's I don't know what we're on, week 7 or 6 or
Mhm.
whatever, me not doing that, but that's starting to drive me nuts. And I want to start opening steakhouses. I don't care.
Specifically.
I don't care about nail salons. I don't care about
No.
tattoo parlors. Fuck those people.
Essential
But
businesses.
essential
Right.
steak houses.
Thank
Let's
you.
get
And with
that.
those banquettes, you probably
Big-
do have the 6 feet.
We fucking.
Well-
I was literally thinking about it, like Kevin Hench and I had a booth that they would always give us at oh god, when Morton's. They'd always, I'd
Morton's.
just call them up. Go Sunday night, 6:00, your usual booth. I go, yeah. And we'd go sit in a far corner with this big high booth, just 2 dudes. There wasn't anyone near us. Like, it would work. Sorry, Brian. Go.
I was going to say, Gina, I know you're not an enthusiastic meat eater, but the steakhouses, most like traditional steakhouses don't have the banquettes. That's the great thing about them. They're all booths. They're all red booths and
Right.
throwback leather. And so that's
King's
probably a good place to open up.
Yeah. Well, you probably know this by now, but Joe Biden has officially been endorsed by Hillary Clinton. The former Democratic presidential nominee made the announcement Tuesday during this virtual town hall. Here it is.
Thank you so much, Joe. It's a real pleasure to be here with you and to be part of this very important discussion. And I am thrilled to be part of your campaign to not only endorse you, but to help highlight a lot of the issues that are at stake in this presidential election.
Is it even possible, after having Veep on the air for so long, to take any of these seriously? When I just think of Julia Louis-Dreyfus gritting her teeth, seething through these interviews. Like, it all just seems so fake.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, is this going to mark the end of the traditional politician? Like, Trump is a circus show, but he's not traditional. You could argue he definitely is anything but
Correct.
traditional. Might we be going another direction? Like, let's just say the kind of, put the suit on and put the flag lapel on and, polish your teeth and all that sort of people you've had arguments with and done battles with and all that kind of stuff, and they come on and everyone does a very sort of canned, sterilized approach, and it's something it's been that way for a long time. Might we just start seeing the renegade outlaw free talking? I mean, movies, if you think about it, movies are always kind of ahead of what we're doing as a society.
Mm-hmm.
They make movies about pandemics, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Then they make movies about living on Mars or going to outer space or, all this stuff. Yeah.
Truman Show begat like reality shows, right? And like a Castaway kind of begat Survivor and et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly. And what they do, Department of Homeland Security will go to sci-fi novelists and go, what's Al-Qaeda got cooking? Like, what you tell us with your creative mind. Like, we're pencil pushers over here. You have a creative mind. You tell us what the future shall hold. And in a way, I mean, I wrote a book called In 50 Years We'll All Be Chicks, and half that shit's come true by now. So, I mean, if you go to the kind of creative people, the Hollywood people, and you go, what's going to happen? Well, every single one of their movies about the next president is usually some plain talking Kevin Costner, aw shucks kind of guy who's just going to speak from the hip and
tell like it is.
He's going to get off the prompter and loosen his tie up a little and have some straight talk with America. He's not a professional politician. He's a farmer who knows a man's handshake is his bond or whatever. Like, maybe that's what's coming. It'd be nice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And if anyone's dying to get back to the, quote unquote traditional candidate, I think my prediction is it'll take another presidential term. I think there's too many people that are loving this free talking, a non-traditional presidency.
Yeah.
Do you think enough people are excited to get Biden involved?
No, I wish somebody a little more animated or a little more exciting was over there than Biden. But
Beto shot his shot.
Well, my only thought is the chaos premise. And I've always said this, like at a certain point, you will take boring over neighbors who never stop partying 24/7. You know, like at a certain point, you just want an elderly couple to move in across the street, and you go, yeah, but you can't go over there and get lit up with those guys and sit in the back of their pickup truck and drink Schlitz. It's like, I know, I want to get some sleep.
Yeah.
Like there could be don't we just want to just go to bed and not think about this? Yes.
Bringing it back to Goodfellas, at a certain point, Tommy wore out his welcome. You know what I mean? Like he was a made guy, or he was in the system, and he was doing his own thing. At a certain point, they just got tired of it.
That's that. Yeah,
well,
nothing they could do.
You brought up, going to the movie makers and saying, what has Al Qaeda got cooking? The last couple of days, people have some real responses to this UFO footage. The Pentagon on Monday officially declassified and released 3 short videos, which we'll show you, of UFOs which had previously been leaked. The videos, which are taken by Navy pilots, show what appear to be unidentified flying objects. They call them unidentified aerial phenomena. The military says it decided to officially release the videos in order to clear up any misconceptions by the public on whether or not the footage was real, whether it exists. And we don't have the audio here, but you do hear one of the pilots say to the other, like, oh man, dude, did you just see that? It just flipped. Like, so there is stuff out there that freaks people out. And we talked about this on the Conway show last night, where he said that there are regular old pilots, commercial pilots, that see things in the air and don't report it because they don't want to be accused of being crazy or drunk or anything else.
Well, it's funny. I've saw a lot of this footage. This footage is older. I mean, in that it's been around for a year.
Yeah.
But
now it's official.
And it looks like a UFO, or it is a UFO, which is
unidentified.
Doesn't mean it's a spaceship, but
you know, I live up by Vandenberg Air Force Base. It's a little north up the coast from me, from Santa Barbara. I see weird shit flying over there quite often. Stuff that, you know, if I knew it wasn't an Air Force base, I'd be like worried or really freaked out. But you know, it's some kind of experimental things that hover. They have weird lights. They fly. And you know, I asked someone else. They said, "Oh yeah, for years there's stuff that flies around up there."
Well, what do you think about this stuff? I mean, this stuff's filmed like over the ocean. I don't know how far away from shore. Here's my thought, which I just like to look at kind of the human response to things. I grew up, and when I grew up, it was all this like UFO talk, and farmers found the wreckage, but the CIA showed up with a flatbed truck and put a tarp over it and went out under the cover of darkness, you know, and it was like tons of UFO conspiracy, UFO. It's all inside a Cheyenne mountain. You know, they're hiding this stuff. Area, is it 51?
51.
Area 51, blah, blah, blah. It was like nonstop UFO. They're hiding it. They're hiding the secret. The government knows UFO. And so I grew up on a steady diet of that. And then I see this footage a year ago, and I'm like, hey, I think that is a UFO. Huh. And then I paused, and I thought, oh, what's for dinner? We eating meatloaf tonight? And I thought, wait a minute. I'm doing the UFO what we did with Lance Bass, which is all we want to know is that he's gay because we think he's gay. Once he says, I'm gay, we go, all right, moving on. And like, once the government goes, hey, we think it is a UFO, we go, oh, all right, moving on.
Mission's confirmed.
Had a hunch.
Right. It's like when you try to hide shit from us, we go nuts. But as soon as you push it out front, we kind of go, all right. I mean, this is not even a big news story, except for potentially it means there's intelligent life that has, you know, mechanical abilities and other realms or galaxies or worlds that have come down to explore us, which would seem like pretty big news.
Yeah.
Indeed.
We should get Mr. DeGrasse Tyson on to weigh in on that, though I'm sure he's done it 1,000 times.
But if we were to really make contact with some other alien, you know, race or something like that, it would be really weird if it was during this administration. Like if the meeting happened on TV, there's a press conference at the Rose Garden with the alien chief and I mean, it would be, I can't imagine anything more.
Trump would be like, thank you very much for this book to serve humans. Our gratitude.
Good pull.
Take a Sopranos DVD.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah, it's, So I kind of feel about UFOs the way I feel about if there is a heaven and if there is a God, which is, people say, well, you're not religious, so if there is a heaven and if there is a God, then you're not getting in. And I'm like, hey, man, I raised my kids. I pay my taxes. I'm a good neighbor. I would get in. I'm not harmed anybody. I'd get in. And my feeling is sort of that way with UFOs in the sense that are aliens, which is like if you guys had constructed, if you were technologically advanced enough to construct this apparatus to fly down light years to see us and have all this ability, I think you're just going to have the cure to this corona thing in your back pocket.
Yeah,
I don't think you're going to be evil.
If you're capable of interstellar or intergalactic travel, what do you think you're going to come here and just shoot everyone with ray guns? No, you're an advanced species.
And a lot of that, yeah, I'm kind of thinking, because I am loosely based, Nazi Germany aside, the worst cultures are the least technologically advanced, by and large. I have found on this planet. So I'm hoping the whatever the equivalent of the terrorist would be on the other planet, which they're not. They wouldn't be the ones building the spaceship and visiting us. They'd be throwing rocks at the spaceship when it was trying to take off.
Although you do talk a lot about, studying people, and I'm now cynical enough to think, I always thought, you know what, the one thing that will unite all of humanity, we'll all stop, we'll all put whatever our weapons down, and we will all band together if somebody from another world came to attack us. Now, no way. We will turn on each other. We will push the other person to the front of the line. I think it'll get worse.
And also, what about these other planets? Because if we sent a representative from our planet could have a representative coming from Germany or Sweden or Canada, but could also have a representative coming from Puerto Rico or Jamaica or Mexico. Like, we got a lot of different representatives with a lot of different thoughts. You know what I'm saying? Or is their planet just all one? Because we always do that with aliens. Like, they're all one. But think about us. We disagree about everything. We look different. We act different. We just affect. Chris grew up playing soccer and lacrosse. What the fuck? I grew up out here playing football. We are very different. Who's to say they're not different?
Yeah. We'll find out soon enough. Speaking of flying apparatus, in Florida, UPS is now going to use drones to deliver prescription medication from a CVS pharmacy to a big retirement community down there. If everything works right, the system, which is called MatterNet M2, those drones, will be able to deliver medicine to more than 135,000 residents in the community without those residents ever leaving their homes.
And I
think there's going to be more of that.
I know we're talking all about refitting everything, and we're started the show talking about Budweiser making hand sanitizer and Ford making respirators and stuff like that. How about the people that made the T-shirt cannons for the Lakers games? Shouldn't they be rebooting to fire medication into old age homes? I mean, those things could fire a Lakers T-shirt up to the fifth row up there. They get a good 80 yards of distance on those.
Absolutely.
Fill it up with Nana's medication. Yeah, I mean, drones are expensive. Have a hot chick and have like a Lakers girl. Right. They're not working.
She's the only one who knows how to operate the gun.
That's right. She's already been bonded and licensed with the T-shirt cannon gun. So and by the way, she's easy on the eyes and she's out of work. You know what I mean? So get her in full Lakers cheerleading regalia. Have her show up at the old age home or wherever the at-risk people are. Fire the medication at them. Again, she knows how to handle it. And let's bring a little pomp and circumstance back to this, a little levity. And again, the drones, the military needs those and they're expensive.
That's right. Will they play the, yo, ready for this?
They got to play the music.
Well, some bad news for cheaters, but good news for cheating websites. The New York Post reports that cyber affairs are thriving during the quarantine, with spouses stuck at home with each other and maybe not getting along so well. Ashley Madison, that's the site aimed at cheating spouses, who conducted the study, said that 17,000 new members are added a day in the midst of this pandemic. Usually it's 15,500, so about 1,700 extra members a day. Some people want to chat with someone other than their spouse. Some are seeking emotional validation. Others don't kind of want that fantasy secret sex, according to the study. And the website even has a new tagline leaning into all this, says, "Life is short, have an affair."
Wasn't that always their tagline?
Let's
For
see.
some
It
reason.
was always,
I don't know. Is it
implied.
Adam?
It was always implied.
Well, during the membership drive, when I got 60%
The 30-day
off,
free, yeah.
and then I got another 20% off after recruiting new members and the referral system. I remember that was their rallying cry.
Strong.
Yeah, I think it was. So, but you're not physically touching anyone. You're
No,
just sort of
you're just
Or
dicking around online.
Touching yourself.
Yeah.
I don't know. Don't we have internet porn to kind of fill this void? Pardon the pun.
But I
mean,
think this must be people who want that real deal, that cam girl connection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just thinking about coaching up my son. You know, I invented the art of spunk shui, which is how to sort of arrange a man's office so he can't get caught looking at internet porn. I've
Helpful.
I've applied it.
You laugh, but
you laugh, but I've actually laid it out at people's houses. But you know, I'm gonna have to teach my son. He's 13. The one of the tells of looking at internet porn is slamming the laptop shut when the person walks into the room.
nothing.
Yeah.
Why? What?
Yeah, because if I'm on Bring a Trailer looking at a Mustang, I don't slam the fucking thing shut if my wife walks into the room, right? Or I'm
That's
on,
a tell.
yeah.
That's a
Gives
giveaway.
the wrong-
Yeah. Dead giveaway.
Yeah.
Dead giveaway.
yeah, we got to figure out a way to do that. All right, Gina, let's bring it home.
You got it. I'm Gina Grad, and that's the news.
That was the news with Gina Grad.
Gina, you're right. The original tag was, God, what was the original?
No,
Chris just had it up there.
the original tag was "Life is short, have an affair," and then they changed it to "Find your moment" in 2016, and then went back.
they're back.
To,
Go back to the
They
original.
Oh,
retired
that's
it, they
right.
said.
Yeah, I remember because I was at the shareholders meeting, and Big Dan. Oh, you don't know him. Anyway, I don't want to use his last name, but he did go on a long jag about this, and I remember agreeing with him at the time. That's why I was confused. All right, let me hit Geico. Do you own? Do you rent? Well, you do one or the other. I bet you do. And you have homeowners insurance, you have renters insurance, you have auto insurance. How about you bundle it at Geico? Just go to geico.com, couple of minutes, and figure out just how fast and how much you could be saving and how easy it is to bundle at Geico. That's geico.com. They make it easy to bundle your homeowners, your renters, and your automotive insurance. Get all under one umbrella at geico.com. Michael Imperioli, everybody, talking Sopranos. It's available now on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. Real Michael Imperioli is his Instagram, if you want to shout out to him. Thanks, Michael. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was fun. Always is.
We'll take a quickie break, and I'll come back with a one-on-one with Congressman and former Navy SEAL Dan Crenshaw right after this.
The Adam Carolla Show salutes the winners of the COVID-19 pandemic. Black Crowes drummer Steve Gorman. Follow me here. The Black Crowes, Chris and Rich Robinson, announced and embarked on a new tour. But they didn't invite any of the other founding members of the band along, at least not at the rates they were getting paid. So Steve Gorman said, "Screw you guys, I'm staying home." Now we're all staying home and buying copies of Steve Gorman's tell-all book on the Black Crowes, Hard to Handle, The Life and Death of the Black Crowes. So while we can't go see our favorite band, we can at least stay home and read about them. Congratulations, Steve Gorman. While we're all losers, you are the winner of COVID-19.
Dan Crenshaw is on the Zoom, Congressman, former Navy SEAL, and author of a book called Fortitude, American Resilience in the Era of Outrage. I'm about 6 chapters in on the audiobook, Dan.
All right. Hey, good to hear. Thanks for having me on, by the way.
Oh, my pleasure. And good news for you and your publisher. I don't know how to work my phone, so I handed my phone to my 13-year-old boy, and I said, I need an audiobook of Dan Crenshaw's audiobook. And he said, okay. And he did it, and then he handed it back to me. And then later on, I was trying to listen to it, and all I could hear is this free sample of it. And then I handed it back to him that afternoon, and I said, hey, boy, I don't have his audiobook. And he went, oh, yeah, I bought the Kindle. And I said, okay.
Hey, all right, I got 2 copies out of you.
Right. Now go get the audiobook. And he did. It's an inspiring book. There's so much in it. Every young person should hear it or read it. When I hear you speak, I hear myself think and speak. That's exactly how I think, and that's how I speak. But let's talk about it. The first, I think people are they know you from SNL originally. Now they know you from everywhere. But the accident, I know how you lost your eye. Let's revisit that and get that out of the way before we move forward with everything else.
I didn't lose my eye. I don't know what you're talking about. So actually, I tell the story in detail in the first chapter, and because on millions of interviews, not millions, exaggeration, on lots of interviews, I've told the story, but I really go into detail, probably never before seen detail in this book, and I talk about how I lost my eye in Afghanistan, because the title of that chapter is called "Perspective from Darkness." And I mean that literally, darkness. I have one eye now that I obviously see out of, but that was not always presumed to be the case. I was blind for a while. And that happened because on a mission, a last minute mission, sort of a quick reaction force type of mission from in Helmand province in Afghanistan, an IED hit me. And that happened because one of my interpreters, great guy who eventually lost his life to this IED, was responding to a call, stepped on it, happened to be right in front of me. He lost 4 limbs right there, both arms, both legs, was badly wounded. You could still hear him in that moment, but he eventually passed away. I was hit with that blast, and it was a blast full of hard rocks and metal, just because an IED can have a lot of different effects. Sometimes it's buried in soft dirt. Okay. If that's the case, you might have a concussion, but there's less likely to be serious fragmentation wounds. This was basically rock that this IED was under, and it was packed with metal. I know that because we pulled bolts and nuts out of my hands and stuff, and my eye had slivers of copper wire in it. Yeah. So it was packed with metal and rock, and that sprayed me. So it was kind of like getting blasted with lots and lots of shotguns. That's sort of what that felt like.
I'm a detail-oriented guy, and I like sort of mechanics, and I like psychology. So hearing you discuss the IEDs and where they would put them and how they would sort of maintain them, that batteries are a commodity in that region of the world, and you can't just go to the corner and grab a Chubb pack at the Home Depot. And they would pull batteries out for periods of time when they didn't think there was going to be any use or foot traffic or something, to save the life of the battery and then replace them. And part of your strategy or unit strategy or American Fighting Forces strategy is to also kind of time it for when you thought the batteries were gone versus when the batteries were in. And talk about how that factored in.
Yeah, well, there's an element of surprise there. So which is why we would always insert on operations in the middle of the night and wake people up, as opposed to a slow, maybe more methodical, just advance on a particular target. You always want to pounce in the middle of the night, because oftentimes strategic locations or fighting positions are surrounded by these IEDs. But as you noted, you can't keep those IEDs powered all the time. That would require constant replacement of batteries. And they don't have the manpower or the desire to do that. And so what they do have, they bury the whole contraption, and then they might have unburied a way to simply connect the device to the battery. And if they see us coming, they'll go around and quickly connect all that. If they don't see us coming, they don't have a chance to. And so we might walk over dozens of IEDs, which is just kind of a horrific thought in and of itself. But on this particular mission, because there'd been fighting there for days, all of these IEDs were already armed because the Marines were in there fighting. We were basically replacing the Marines in order to keep a presence there.
The IEDs is the explosive they use fertilizer?
Yeah, it's a fertilizer compound.
Do they make them out of wood for detection purposes, or because that's the material they have available?
It's the best material, both because you can't detect it and it just makes sense. Because really what you need is in a pressure plate is two panels, in this case wood panels, that are on top of each other. They're not touching, and they're surrounded by, they're like wrapped in wire. Okay, and as soon as they get crushed by a foot, the wire in each panel touches each other. Okay, so the wood paneling is really there to provide structure to the device. Very simple. All you're doing there is connecting the circuit, and so which sets off a smaller explosive, which sets off the large explosive. Any bomb always has an initiation device and a smaller explosive that sets off the larger explosive.
How psychologically damaging or horrifying is it to literally have to look at every step you take, thinking your foot may be blown off, or you may be killed, or you may be blinded, or your interpreter may be killed? The psychological impact of that, and I'm guessing this is part of why they do it, the psychological impact has to be insane.
Yeah, no, it definitely wears on guys. There's a much greater fear. Most SEALs are just itching for a gun battle. I mean, that's just what you go there for. What you don't want to do is get blown up, because there's a lot less glory in that. And so it is psychologically devastating. It is why they do it. It's tiresome. Now, does it wear us down to an extent? Yes. Also, we compartmentalize these things pretty radically.
I just got a note that you are unaware of it, but your publisher reached out to us and said that the book is for the third week straight on the New York Times bestseller list.
All right,
so
congratulations.
Better be. Yeah,
thank you.
It's a great book, and it's not a military book. It's I'm gonna call it an advice book, but it's just
it's a mix.
It's a mix. The military's the direction that Dan chose, and there's a version of this where you can play organized sports at a real competitive level and get a lot of the same things out of it that Dan got out of the military. I mean, the military is extreme, but you can learn a lot about working with others and being a good teammate and perseverance and overcoming pain and pushing past things. You can get to all that stuff if you want to be an endurance athlete, or you want to play, competitive hockey, whatever. It's all there. It's all about just sort of unleashing that, unlocking that. I'll jump all over the place, but one of the chapters, maybe chapter 4, that you talk about that I was most attracted to was the stillness chapter, just that stillness concept. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, and I mean that quite literally, be still. And there's a lot of deeper philosophy behind that, dating back to ancient Stoicism, this sort of be still philosophy. And it just basically means, in layman's terms, count to 10 before you react. That might be the simplest way to describe it. And I would describe all of these lessons in this book as very simple, but deeper than maybe you've given them credit for. And the oldest ideas tend to be the best ones because they've lasted the longest, and that's pretty important. And so stillness has a lot of applications. I talk about applying that mentality to combative interviews, of which I don't do them all the time, but I do them in some of the most public ways. And you have to be able to center yourself if you're going to deal with combative public interviews on live TV. If you get blown up, you're going to have to deal with, you're going to have to engage in a sense of stillness, because overreacting and emotionally reacting to anything, it may be totally justified, it may be understandable, but it's never useful. And that's the point. And the sooner you understand that, the more capable you'll be of avoiding overly emotional reactions. And I try to apply this to daily life, especially as it pertains to outrage culture. Because remember, the main thrust of this book is defeating outrage culture and defeating emotionally driven reactions. And so, I go into excruciating detail actually on a few examples, like policy examples. Like, this is what you hear on a headline or a billboard or an angry protester waving a sign. Like, this is what you hear, but here's all the information behind it. If you would actually just look into it instead of reacting to it emotionally, this is what you would find out. And this applies to so many things. I mean, like you said, I've become more well-known for a lot of things. And one of those things is my social media videos, which are basically just debunking narratives and lies that are being put forth, political lies. And because I'm telling people, like, there's just so much more to what's going on, and they're just not telling you the truth.
Well, for me, whenever you hear a politician accuse another politician of something that doesn't make sense, or a business or anything, if you just hear something that doesn't make sense, like a year ago, we were hearing, border agents are ripping kids out of the arms of their mothers and throwing them in cages. And it's like, why? For no good reason, because Trump told them to. And it's like, there's got to be something behind that other than just burning calories, being cruel. There must be there. Now, here's the deal. Once we drill down and scratch the lotto ticket and see what's underneath the weird silver stuff that's on top of it, then we may agree or disagree with the policy. But as long as you're couching it as border guards are pulling kids out of the arms of their mothers and throwing them in cages, then we're never really going to be able to have a discussion on this, because the way you're describing it, no human being with a soul could ever raise their hand and say, I disagree. So how can we have an exchange on you saying, puppies are great and the sky is blue? You can't couch it that way. You have to couch it as a policy, and then we can discuss the merits of the policy.
Yeah, and that's a huge part of what that book is about. And because, in the midst of a heated emotional discussion about kids being ripped from their mother's arms, that the person claiming that has no desire to listen to the facts at that point, right? I mean, you just know that ahead of time. And so, I have to reach people like that with this book, and I hope it does, because it's not an overly political book. It's actually very, very light on politics. And so, I use politics as examples, but I don't make a case for conservatism. And I try to, when I do criticize a left-leaning politician, I try to criticize a right-leaning politician also. And so, I hope people read this book and think to themselves, have I done that? Like, have I made that really dishonest, bad faith, emotional argument? And what did that add to the conversation?
Well, I don't know. We've been sort of supercharged lately with that kind of, bad faith politics or accusations. We've taken the country, and anybody who thoughtfully suggests we should be thinking of ways to reopen California and what businesses can reopen safely and what's a responsible approach to this reopening has been labeled a bad person who's in love with death, which is like, first things first, please stop being so insulting with your arguments. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm for school vouchers. Does that make me a racist? Really? Like, please, it's insulting to hear the argument being called a racist or bigot or homophobic or a hater or wanting more death. Really think what that must sound like, and why would it make any sense at all for anybody in this modern era who lives in California to want more death or to be a whatever, fill in the blank. So like, please.
I wrote a whole op-ed about this in the Hill. It was published by the Hill a few weeks ago, because I saw this coming. There was early signals of exactly these kind of bad faith arguments. I saw it coming. I said, and I called it 2 viruses spreading throughout America, one of which is the coronavirus, the other which is the bad faith political arguments. Because what it is fundamentally is political opportunism. And the best way to combat that isn't to defend yourself right away, right? Because they've already got you on the defense. And so the best way to combat bad faith arguments like that is in that moment, call it a bad faith argument. Say, listen, you are framing this in a way that is really dishonest. Once you do that, once you just call out and expose the actual what is really happening in front of you, you've reframed the argument. And that's my advice to people. You have to think deeper in kind of a psychological way about what they're doing at that moment. They're moralizing and they're making bad faith arguments to make you seem like a bad person, when in reality you're trying to have a balanced discussion. See, you can say that to somebody and totally diffuse the argument.
Circling back to stillness, it's something that I've always thought about. Because I've done a fair bit of car racing. And when you get into a real race car, it's a cage essentially. And purpose-built race cars, usually cage, and you have to kind of crawl in the window. And they have a 6-point harness and a seat that kind of goes up all the way around you real high, and they put a net up in the window and stuff like that. And they actually do a test if you're going to race in a professional race, where you have to get all suited up, and they time you, the race official times you to see how fast you can get out of the car, because if you can't do it in 30 seconds, you might burn in a fire. So you get all sort of bolted in and helmeted up and everything like that. But you end up spending a lot of time in the car before the race. Like, you're all belted in and strapped in and sitting there, and it's a claustrophobic kind of weird environment. It's super tight. It's got all kinds of like gauges and hoses and metal like everywhere. It doesn't feel comfortable at all. And when you're wearing like fire suits and a hood and long johns, and you're all weird and claustrophobic. If you go a little bit zen, and you can completely relax in this weird cage that you're strapped into, or you can kind of freak out. But if you go kind of the zen route, it's very easy to do what you have to do to go out and drive the race. And when you were talking in your book about your Navy SEAL training, BUDS, basic underwater demolition something, there's that part where they throw you in the pool and they put your scuba gear on and they tie stuff up in a knot and they bust you up and they fuck up your mask and they push you and you have to go to the bottom and they, tie your hands up behind you. If you don't go full stillness mode there, you're going to drown immediately, right?
Yeah. Well, you'll fail. They won't let you drown, thank God.
But you'll fail.
But it come close to drowning. They let you get pretty close. And so there's a couple different exercises or tests that we do that really beat this into your head, and they're all underwater. One is the one you're describing. We call that pool competency week, and that's in second phase. And they're basically simulating what they call a surf hit, which means it's this incredibly complex wave that like somehow dives down and ties your scuba hoses into knots. And then you have to go through a very specific set of procedures to untie them. You can't just bolt to the surface, otherwise you fail. And this is pretty difficult to do when you can't breathe and you're chicken necking, because, just imagine what I mean by chicken necking. And it's when you can't breathe and your body is naturally gasping for air. That's a pretty natural thing that happens. And because they always manage to take your regulator out as soon as you or right after you exhale. And so that's later on. Before that, we do something called drown proofing, which is a little simpler. They tie your hands behind your back and tie your feet together, and they say swim. Okay, well, as it goes, you can actually swim like this, but you have to be pretty calm and you can't panic. And if you even get your heart rate a little bit too high, like you will start to panic. Your form will start to falter and you'll drown. You can't really swim back up to the surface in that state. You can stay on the surface and breathe and keep moving forward, but you can't really swim back up. And so, the water is just the best place to learn these skills in a very physical way for combat. I'm not saying everybody should tie their hands behind their back and their feet together and jump in the pool. And if you do it, just do it with a buddy so that they can save you when you screw it up. But it's a great way to learn this kind of mental stillness. It's how we learn it. It's not the only way to learn it. You can force yourself to be that person. You simply imagine I talk about this in the sense of wargaming. You imagine these contentious and raging, triggering situations that you might be in, and then you react to them in your head before they've actually happened. And you can imagine what those are, and imagine who you want to be and how you would want to react, and then react that way when the time actually comes, instead of like an emotional wreck.
There's also an interesting metaphor for life when they tie you up in the pool, as you describe in the book, Fortitude, American Resilience in the Era of Outrage. There's an interesting metaphor, which is you have to push off the bottom, get your way up to the surface, get a gulp of air, and go back down again. If you push too hard, you're wasting energy. You don't need to push your whole torso out of the pool like a dolphin. You're going to burn your quads out. But if you don't push hard enough, you're not going to make it and get that gulp of air. So that balance, that sort of that dance around the appropriate amount of force, really, is a very interesting metaphor for life.
I didn't even note that was a metaphor in the book, but in hindsight, I should have. I'm gonna put that in my second edition. After speaking with Adam, this it is a metaphor for life, and the entire book is about balance, really. Because I'm not, I don't want to suggest that you shouldn't criticize people on social media, right? I don't consider that wrong. I just think you should think through it when you do it, and maybe avoid character attacks and avoid disingenuous bad faith attacks, and go on the attack on ideas. I certainly do it. I fight a lot of battles, right? Like, I'm not known for being a wishy-washy politician. I fight a lot of battles, but there's a way to do it that's respectable, and there's a way to do it that isn't.
Well, look, once you get on to the ad hominem character attacks, aren't you admitting you lost? I mean, let's just pull us out. Let's get out of the political realm for a second. Let's just say we were both sitting at a big mahogany table at some sort of advertising firm, and a couple of guys were coming in and they were presenting us, logos, for our new product, or, your cover, the cover of your book. I got a book coming out. You have a book out. And someone is saying, I'm a graphic artist. I want to present you the cover. And you were sitting there looking at the cover and you were like, well, I think this cover is better. And instead of the guy who had the losing cover, instead of him going, well, let me tell you some modifications I could make, or hear me out, let me tell you why I think mine is more effective. That guy goes, well, that guy's a dick and he's a racist and he doesn't like kids. Like, you'd go, what? Isn't this an argument about what product is better or what's going to be more effective? And you're calling him a hater or evil or whatever it is. And I'm like, buddy, you're losing this argument. You should be explaining to me why your product is better, why you're going to be more effective, not what's wrong with him.
So I agree with that. The problem is that in our current culture, he's not losing the argument, he's winning the argument.
Right.
And so that's the problem. It's the people doing it are certainly the problem, right? The people on social media making these really disingenuous character attacks, whether it's political or otherwise, they are the problem. However, so is every single person who engages with that post. So is every single person who cheers them on. So this is an us problem. It's not a specific people problem, because these people wouldn't do it. They wouldn't be successful if they weren't cheered on by millions of Twitter users. Right. The engagement happens when it's a negative character attack. And AOC is probably the best example of how to just fight dirty. Like, I mean, she really fights the dirtiest. And like you look through these tweets when she goes after somebody, and you're just like, this is not true. Right? Like, you just know it, but you're saying it anyway. And this is one of the reasons people think, or for a period of time, the media and everybody always thought that me and AOC went at it a lot. We really never do. There's almost like this unspoken ceasefire. And I think it's healthier that way, frankly, as I always debate the substance. I always say, listen, you are dead wrong about this. Here's why they're lying. And here's the truth. But the counterattacks are like stupid partisan, stupid one-eyed partisan, like that's actually quite literal. I just read that on one of my podcasts. comments. You know, they're mostly good, but every once in a while you see like a meme tweet like that. You're just like, okay, well, obviously you've got nothing real to say against me. Nobody's ever debunked me. Nobody's ever been able to call me a real, like call me out on a real policy issue. They just call me out for having one eye, which they're just jealous.
Well, it's funny you bring up stupid, and I've often had this discussion when you talk about some of the people I know that are conservative. And I think about a guy like Dennis Prager, speaks 5 languages, has traveled to every country in the world, lived in Russia when he was 21, spoke fluent Russian, has written X amount of books, has X amount of degrees. I mean, has written more papers, and you could call him anything but stupid. You could call him anything but stupid. I mean, the guy literally speaks fluent Russian and 5 other languages and conducts symphonies. So he's not stupid. He's not stupid. You may disagree with some of his positions, but just to call him stupid or to call Ben Shapiro stupid, that's insane when you look at their pedigree. When you look at what they've done. And to call Dan Crenshaw stupid, that's insane as well when you look at the pedigree. So, or Dr. Drew or whomever, like, let's get off of that part at least. Like, people can have disagreements. That doesn't make one side dumb. And how long do you think I'm going to listen to you calling super bright people who you disagree with dumb or racist? Go ahead and engage them on whatever the battle is. Don't dig a hole and put the fertilized filled landmine in the ground. Go engage them on the field of battle. Pick up an arm and do it. And my thinking is, and kind of where I'm starting to drift, but I'd be interested in hearing your take on this, is I don't think they can beat them in the argument. I think they know it. I think they're starting to become aware of that. I noticed it when Adam Schiff was on Bill Maher a year ago, and Bill said, why don't you go on to Fox and stick it to Hannity or stick it to Tucker Carlson, like straighten those guys out, inform their audience. And he sheepishly had to say, I've been invited many times. Like he doesn't want to go. And
no, they're scared. Right.
So is all this stuff coming from knowing a base of I can talk shit about the champ, but I'm never going to lace up the gloves and get in the ring, because when I do, it's just going to be me and him.
Yeah, and when they do go on, it's not good for them. They don't, because I've been on Bill Maher and I knew what I was getting into, and I thought it went rather well. But I've seen and more power to him. Like Eric Swalwell went on Tucker, but he got destroyed, frankly, on the arguments. And Tucker, I think, was very fair on the arguments. I'm thinking of just one specific case. So it's not like they never go on, but the arguments are hollow, and they can't answer very, very basic questions about with respect to that particular case, like the issue of people's rights, the issue of the practicality of confiscating millions of weapons, for instance. They never have to answer these questions because journalists won't ask them. And the media in general treats conservatives and liberals extremely differently. I don't want to be treated any differently. I don't mind having a combative press against me. I just want the press to be equally as combative and suspicious of everything the Democrats say. That's all I'm asking for. I just want fairness. I don't understand why when Nancy Pelosi goes on TV, she's never issued a hard question. Whether it's delaying the funding that we've had for the PPP program, none of it. It's more like you are doing a great job. Thank you so much for. It's like you just don't treat Republicans like that. And I don't want you to treat Republicans like that. I want the press to do its job and be combative equally towards everybody.
Speaking of the aforementioned Adam Schiff, I guess I'm in his district and I get his newsletters, sometimes mostly asking for money or support or whatever. But I got one this morning, and it made me, I was thinking about interviewing you, and it made me think about you because it's this language. this sort of mean person language stuff that I don't get. It's all over politics now. AOC is probably one of the head cheerleaders for this kind of calling this cruel or mean or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'll just read you or Dawson will just read the top of it, the first paragraph, because I just got it this morning and I sent it to Dawson. I said, well, Dan's going to like to hear this, but go ahead and just do the first paragraph, Dawson.
Dear Adam, there are two paths before us this November. One path is the way we are already on. With the degradation of our democracy and the rule of law, the devastation of our healthcare, and damage to our nation that will be near irreparable. That is the path of re-electing Donald Trump and further emboldening him to pursue his cruel agenda.
And I thought, cruel agenda? Really? Now,
I'm sorry. I was so distracted by that unbelievably deep and ominous voice that I just heard.
It actually did kind of make me believe it was going to happen. But now, Trump's got a bunch of policies that you may disagree with, but I don't think he has a cruel agenda, because I think my basic take on Trump is he treats this country like a business, and he wants to brag about fourth quarter earnings or whatever the version of that is for this business that he's running called the United States. Agree or disagree with policies, but being cruel for the sake of cruel, just sort of, that's a calorie burner.
I mean, it's so over the top. It's so over the top. Like it's laughable, but this is how he tweets. This is how most Democrats tweet and write things, and people let it go. People are fine with it. If I write something like that, people will tell me to stop being so divisive. Stop saying things like that. They're not evil. Why are you saying they're evil and cruel? Don't say that. But he gets away with it. It's also just so fundamentally untrue. Like what do you mean what are you talking about, Adam Schiff? The rule of law being under, like, what are you talking about? Like the devastation of the country? What devastation to our healthcare? What are you talking about? But this is the place where people come for healthcare because they can't get treated in Canada and Great Britain, because like we have the best in the world. Is it too expensive? Yes. I just did a whole podcast on why it's so expensive. There's a lot of nuance to that, but to say where Donald Trump just wants to devastate it, it's so patently absurd, but unfortunately it works. Adam Schiff doesn't even have competition politically.
Well, yeah, because he's in California and we all vote for him. But I want to go on a slightly deeper level or journey with you, if you think about it. When I hear about adult males, for some reason, and I'm a little old-fashioned, but guys that are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and they speak this way, which isn't to say they disagree, but they choose words like cruel intentions and all that, tearing babies away from mothers' arms. There's a kind of a dignity that I feel like I have, and I feel like you have from your military service and also many of the stories in the book and what I know about you, that would always prevent you from saying something like that. It would just prevent you. There's an interesting thing, which I notice in people that have a kind of a dignity. And you did it right at the top of our show. And Dennis Prager, if you listen to him, does it quite often as well. He'll say, every time I'm arguing with a Democrat, and then he'll pause and he'll go, well, not every time. There are some good Democrats, but oftentimes when I'm arguing with, and he corrects himself all the time.
A caveat's important, like give them something, right? And I'll often say, like, the left isn't wrong to want a lot of things that they want. They're just wrong, very wrong about how they want to go about it. And I don't try to question their intentions. And to your point, a real man doesn't seek to use emotional manipulation to make their point. And when you read a phrase like you just read from Adam Schiff, it is pure emotional manipulation. The most persuasive tactic is fear. And this is in the research. This isn't just my opinion. And instilling fear in somebody is the most persuasive tactic.
I agree. And I'm going to tease this one, which is what I worry about is there is a chasm growing between the people that sort of sit around, live in a virtual world, and watch way too much CNN, and the politicians who understand who these people are and how they're ever growing constituency and choose words like cruel because it works on this group of dumbos I have to live with here in California. And then there's another group that's out at the firing range, at the dojo, laying down some MMA, who's out in the garage modifying their El Camino with a big block in it. Like, there's another group that's just going. I mean, look no further than coronavirus. Half the people I live with in Hollywood are in a goddamn fetal position right now, crying themselves to sleep. Another group on this side of the country is taken to the streets in their pickup trucks with the American flags, flying in the back of it. Maybe everyone is just going further and deeper to the either side of the pool for the giant Marco Polo game. And I worry because it's so much easier to be the scared person than it is to be the person at the bottom of the pool with their hands tied behind their back, that's going to attract a much larger group of our society into the scared tent. The scared, angry tent is such an easy access tent. The stoic tent, you discuss in your book, that kind of stoicism, that is a much more difficult tent to get into, and many Americans aren't going to fight to get in it. Think about that for a second. Hell, maybe we should collaborate on your next book, man. I got some ideas.
A lot of good ideas.
Let me hit LegalZoom, and then I'd like your opinion on that statement.
Yep, well, I got lots of opinions.
I know you do. LegalZoom, with health and safety on everyone's mind. Now it's time to take your loved ones and protect them. LegalZoom, it's a reliable way to set up the right estate plan without leaving your home. Do you need a last will and testament or a living trust? Yes, you do. LegalZoom can help you, and they can help on advance healthcare directives as well. I was just talking about that with Dr. Drew. Power of attorney, sure, that can help you with that. Don't try to figure everything out on your own. You need to speak to an attorney, and they have an independent network of attorneys to guide you all along the way. LegalZoom isn't a law firm, but Mark Garagos sends people there all the time. Right, Dawson?
Take an important step for your family today. Go to LegalZoom.com to get started on a last will, living trust, and more, or find out how you can speak to an attorney for advice on the right estate plan. LegalZoom, where life meets legal.
So when you hear a statement like that from Adam Schiff, most people in California hear him say agenda of cruelty, and they go, oh, yeah, that's a warm blanket just put over my shoulders. And I hear it, and I go, yuck, ugh. Like, ugh, I could never fucking be in the same room with that guy. So we're dividing. We're spreading out. I don't know. The middle's going to have to pick a side. Stoicism. Yeah. Dan Crenshaw, go.
So, I mean, what you're highlighting there is this sort of victimhood versus victor mentality. There's deep psychological differences between the type of people that you were describing, the people who would prefer to wait for somebody to save them, and those who would, get in their big truck and wave an American flag and go to the shooting range and live free or die. And in America, we have long looked up to, and I think put on a pedestal, the latter, the person who takes care of themselves, the person who returns the welfare check because they don't feel like they need it, and the person who wants to start that small business and work their butts off to beat everybody else and tell that story. That's long been the hero archetype that we've looked up to. And I have a chapter called Who is Your Hero, where I dive into the psychology of heroism in a much deeper way. The problem is that we've started to elevate the wrong kind of heroes, and we've elevated victims, and we've put victims at the forefront of the totem pole, really. And if you claim to be an aggrieved victim, if you claim to be oppressed, you are elevated in our society. This is why you see something like the Jussie Smollett case. This is why Elizabeth Warren will claim to be Native American, or that she was discriminated against when she was pregnant. None of these things were true. They weren't true, right. But they say them. Why would you say them? Why would you talk about being oppressed? What is the point of that? Well, it's because our culture rewards that now, and that's crazy. So it's rewarding weakness. It's rewarding victimhood when it doesn't happen.
Why would you brag about having an abortion?
Well, that's a whole other crazy topic, really. I mean, it's nuts. That's more of a loss of respect for basic human value, I think, which is another cultural problem.
No, but what
the victim,
what I'm saying is you're trying to get at the psychology of sort of advertising that you're a victim, where everything's a kind of what's in it for you. Why are you signaling that you're a victim? And we can do a victim of just about anything these days. Obviously, you're being rewarded for it, is what you're saying. Right.
Exactly. And you're being rewarded in sociological terms. Okay. So, and then how does this manifest in political terms? Well, as you noted, it's really hard to battle against an opposing policy that just tells people they're victims and offers to keep them safe and give them everything they need. How do I compete with that? My counter message is, no, I want to empower you. I want you to be able to choose freely what you want to do, to fail and succeed on your terms. But people are like, well, yeah, I mean, that makes sense, but they're offering me all the free stuff. What are you going to do for me? And that's what the voters have become so accustomed to asking that question. What are you going to do for me? And I'm like, well, I'm going to provide a governing system that is stable enough so that you can succeed in it. That's my job. That's my job to govern, to protect your inalienable rights. Provide some sense of public safety, of course, so you can pursue pursue happiness. But don't ask me to make you happy. The Declaration of Independence says pursue happiness. Democrats are promising to make you happy, to make you wealthy, and to take from somebody else in order to do that. And they do this by emphasizing victimhood politics and emphasizing group on group identity politics and emphasizing resentment. And this has caused people to be very resentful, very angry. This is how the politics of the left. This is the only time in the book is the very last chapter. You haven't gotten to this chapter yet, but this is where I wrap it up, where I talk about how victimhood ideology has created this an actual hatred of America. Why have we gotten to this point where we're starting to tearing down America's foundations, calling our foundation racist and genocidal, calling our American flag oppressive, decrying the national anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance? Why have we gotten to this point? Because in the eyes of this radical group, America is the ultimate oppressor. America is the ultimate oppressor against all the victims, and it has to be completely undermined and revolutionized in order to become good again. And I find this to be very, very dangerous. And it all stems from victimhood ideology and politicians being opportunistic about how to play on people's fears, to encourage those fears, and to encourage that sense of victimhood. It's horrible. And this is why it's so immoral to do that. This is the last thing I'll say. Because it's disempowering. The worst thing you can do to somebody's psyche is to disempower them, to make them feel like they have no control over their lives and that somebody else is doing something to them and that their destiny is totally decided by somebody else. I don't know why you would want to do that to somebody, but that's effectively what their kind of messaging does.
We are 100% correct. I've been saying this for a long time. You are taking these people, you're convincing them that they're victims, and you're hobbling them, and you're destroying their lives. And look, we understand the sort of free handout mentality as it pertains to nature, and we understand it does not work. There's no such thing as feeding the bears. It doesn't work. The bears have to learn to forage and hunt and go out on their own. Like, everyone gets that. Like, we understand that throwing the dog too many table scraps makes the dog fat and lazy and just hang out by the table waiting for more scraps. What's insidious to me is that you are destroying these groups by promising them free jelly beans because you're telling them they can't hunt and they can't go out and they can't make their own way because we're in a society where it's not even worth trying. I mean, if you really break it down, if somebody said you were an avid soccer player in high school, and if somebody said, hey, here's the deal. The other team is going to be going downhill on the soccer field for the first half. I'm just saying half. And then when they switch it around for the second half, you guys switch directions. It's going to go down the other direction. Or football. You'd go, I'm not playing. I'm not going to compete. I'm not going
Right.
out there. Why would I?
Right.
By the way, I wouldn't compete either. Like I'd go, hey, if the fucking field's going to be downhill their direction every time, I'm not going to do it. So it hobbles people. People are narcissistic by nature, and everyone has to fight this victim status because it's a narcissism. And it's not just a group or skin color or religion. We all, you'll look at the New York Times bestseller list, you'll see 3 books ahead of your book, and you'll think, well, that guy has an advantage because that guy's publisher is blah, blah, blah. Or the New York Times has it out for
I
me.
have been thinking that recently, just to be honest. So it's not fair.
I'm a conservative, and they discriminate against, and we all have those thoughts. We all have those
Right.
thoughts, and they're true. Sometimes they can be true. They can definitely be true, but they still don't serve us. So whether they're true or untrue, and they're mostly untrue, but even if they are true, they still don't serve you. And the politicians are tapping into this. They understand what's going on, and they are simply and cruelly just getting the votes from these people. They're not looking down the road and thinking, how is this going to work out? Where's this person going to be in 25 years?
No, they don't at all.
They're all taking the short money.
Second and third order consequences are never in the calculation with a lot of these feel-good policies and supposedly compassionate policies. It's weird that you say you've only read chapters 1 through 6 in the book, because you've so far now basically described the last 2 chapters of the book. So so what you just described was my chapter 9, which is called The Stories We Tell Ourselves. And it's exactly about that. What is the story you're telling yourself about the injustice incurred against you? What is the story you want to tell yourself about your victimization? Because I'm not saying there's no victims. There clearly are. That does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying that you better actually have something to point to. The problem is we've sort of lumped together victimization, just based on usually some immutable characteristic, but that's not real. If there is a real instance of it and it's provable, well, let's talk about that's real. But we do have a system of justice that confronts that kind of thing. The problem is we've warped what justice even means in the new victimhood ideology. But even if it does happen, what is the story you tell yourself about it? Do you wallow in self-pity, or do you move past it? Do you want to be victorious over that terrible instance, or do you do you win or do you lose? It's really up to you. I mean, you can't change what happened, but you can change what happens in the future.
Right.
And that's the story you tell yourself. And there's sort of little mental tricks that you can do that I talk about in the book. One is like, okay, describing my own situation. I get 2 statements or I have 2 statements. Okay. I have to wear an eye patch, or I get to wear an eye patch because it's cool. I get to, I had to lose my job, or I get to lose my job. Like, and I'm not trying to like wash over the crappiness of losing a job. That sucks. But you can tell yourself a different story about it. And I've had to do this too. Like I had a hard time transitioning out of the military. I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do. I'm not going to complain that much. I mean, I'm fine, but it's not easy. And then like, I ran into obstacles. I thought I was a sure thing into certain career paths. And then I wasn't all of a sudden. And, but you know what, I look back on it, and even in that moment, I was like, good. I'm glad that was a failure, because I bet there's a better opportunity around the corner. I ended up being right. And so you have to go through life that way. I don't care if it's not true. Just like you said, it doesn't matter if it's not true. You have to tell yourself that story. It's the only option for success.
No, I'm a heterosexual white guy who's rich and over 6 foot tall. So I don't experience a lot, but because of who I am and many of the things I've said, I don't believe there's a shot for me to get any of my documentary films into Sundance, which is a major player for documentary films. And I do believe, based on the Rotten Tomatoes scores of all the documentaries I've done, I would be admitted into Sundance if it didn't have Adam Carolla's name on the front of it. So I do feel like in that instance, I'm being discriminated against. On the other hand, I have too more docs ready to come out or just about ready to put the finishing touches on, and 5 others planned. So I'm just going to barrel ahead and make docs. If you want to bring up Sundance, I shall feel a little discriminated against when it comes to Sundance. This is a first world problem, but I'm just not going to stop me from making documentaries. And I want to make the next one. I want it to be better than the last one.
Yeah, and this is an interesting point because there is a difference in between how victimhood ideology manifests on the left and the right, and also what's really going on. Because the left will often say that, well, okay, well, the right's always complaining, engaging in victimhood too, because they say that they're, you know, banned from Twitter and discriminated on social media and all this and all that. And so aren't conservatives being victims too? To an extent, that's true, but not really. And here's the difference. If you're pointing to an individual situation where you were banned from Instagram, well, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that you were banned. I mean, there's no way around that. But if you're saying that you're just generally discriminated against because of your some immutable characteristic, without ever having even pointed to a situation where you've actually been discriminated against, well, that's true victimhood ideology. See the difference?
Dan,
and like,
sorry, just repeat that last thought one more time. It got a little glitch.
Like the whole thing?
No, you're banned. If you're individually banned, that's hard to argue with. But
yeah, so you know, in one case, an action is being taken against an individual, and there's evidence for that action. So in the case of being banned from Twitter or Instagram, now you might be wrong about why you were banned. That's a total possibility. I understand there's complex algorithms, but the point is that it's not really victimhood ideology. You're complaining about a specific instance. On the other hand, if you're complaining generally that there's some kind of systemic discrimination against you, but you're not providing an instance, not providing any kind of evidence that we can kind of stand shoulder to shoulder with you and say this was wrong, well, that's victimhood ideology. It doesn't. There's no evidence that I can point to, and it's like you're ghost hunting. And and so there's a real difference there, and I don't think that nuance is talked about enough honestly. And when the left complains about the right's victimhood ideology, because it does manifest to an extent, but not the way they're saying it does.
Well, there's also a lot of arguments that aren't really apples to apples arguments, like when Dennis Prager, who's of PragerU, says YouTube is, you know, basically put the parental consent on 100 of our videos, and so they can't be shown in schools and libraries. Somebody will say, well, okay, but they've also done that to the Young Turks. They've taken many of their videos, and they're far to the left. And you go, oh, well, that's something. But then you go, no, the Young Turks are pulled down because they use swear words.
Right.
That's their policy.
I was going to say.
Dennis Prager doesn't swear or have nudity or any scatological anything. They're pulling his down for the ideology, not the verbiage. So those are very different reasons to pull something down. And no, you did not make your point when you said those guys on the left got pulled down because those guys had language. And by the way, that's agreed upon going in. You can't use this kind of language. It won't be available at the library or the school. Dan, last for you. You get asked all the time about running for president, I'm sure. You're 36 years old.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's probably not something you're going to talk about in great detail. But I remember a couple things. I don't know why I was saying this to Mike August when he was trying to book Dan Crenshaw on the show. I said, Mike, mark my words, Dan Crenshaw is going to be the president. And I said, I'm as sure of it as the time I saw Christoph Waltz in Inglourious Bastards, and then he came on my podcast, and I said, you, my friend, are going to win an Academy Award for that role. And it was 18-1 or something at the time. And I don't think it was Django. I think it was Inglourious Bastards. Anyway, he ended up winning. I just knew it. I feel that way about you in the presidency. And I feel that way because I think your politics and your bedside manner, for lack of a better term, and demeanor will transcend the Republican or Democrat label. I feel like I've heard you debate. It's all about just the facts. It's always done in a tone that's respectful. And obviously, you have the background, Navy SEAL and war veteran, and so on and so forth. It just, and I do feel like at some point, whether it's Adam Schiff talking about Trump or Trump talking about Trump, at a certain point, we're going to have to return to something that's a little more, commercial airline pilot. Guy gets on the blower, tells you we're heading for a little choppy air, but don't worry, he's in control. He's trained. At some point, we're going to have to return to that. So what are your honest feelings on what I just said?
I mean, definitely no plans. I gotta focus on this re-election. I've got a lot of people who want to see me go down. Pretty much for the exact reasons that you just described. They are used to having a Republican Party that they can vilify easily, and that's always back on their toes and unable to respond and frame the arguments correctly. You keep mentioning Dennis Prager and Ben Shapiro. We didn't always have these guys. These guys have risen to prominence only recently, really. And so the conservative movement has weapons that we just never had before. I haven't had for a long time, not since Reagan era. And I think they're terrified of that. I'm deeply humbled by your assessment. Let me say that. It feels way too soon to even think about it. That's unfortunately all I can say.
Well, if AOC runs in a few years, you're going to have to throw your patch in the ring.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
And also, you do really seem like a scholar of these issues. And I think it's probably your background. It's probably your training, which is you can't get into a debate and call the person across the table from you a bad person. That's not going to work for you. You need to win the debate with information. And you seem to devour that information. Could you let us in a little on your modes or techniques for that? How do you work that?
Well, absolutely. For one thing, conservatives have to be way more prepared because we can't use the emotional arguments, and which means you have to be prepared for the arguments and the counter arguments, and you have to be able to anticipate those. And so, maybe there is some training from battle where you're always anticipating your opponent's movements, and what the contingencies would be as that comes up. And there's a great degree of wargaming that occurs there. It's also a sense of professionalism. You should just know what you're talking about, and you should know that people tend to follow leaders who know what they're talking about. That seems obvious when you say it, but maybe it's not so obvious anymore, and it should be. There's a way to frame arguments too. So to win the argument, you've got to be persuasive, right? That's what winning is. You can sort of have a superficial win, which is normal in our politics, where you have like this kind of Pyrrhic victory where you sort of own the other guy, but it's kind of in a disingenuous way. And you might get a lot of Twitter hits on it, but it's not real. It's way better to own somebody with actual evidence and information. And because that's also persuasive, because people see that and they're like, wait a second, you didn't resort to name calling. You didn't throw your hands in the air like some like to do. You didn't shake your fist. You didn't get emotional. You just kind of took down, you actually took on the argument directly. This is another thing. Too often in politics, because people don't know enough of what they're talking about and they don't anticipate the other side's argument, they talk past each other, right? So one side will say, my healthcare plan is better for workers. And the other side will say, actually, my healthcare plan is better for workers. And you're like, well, what the hell does that even mean?
Right.
Like, it's not even, it's just totally, you're not confronting the issues at all. No direct confrontation. Like the best way I've heard this described, I can't take credit for this analogy, but it's like people playing tennis with each other in different courts.
Yeah.
And that's often politics. People are really sick of that. I think voters can sense that it doesn't make sense. And so unfortunately, a lot of voters are then persuaded by the more emotional argument. If you have to choose one because you can't figure out which one's correct, you're just going to choose the more caring and kind emotional argument that gives people nice things and cares about people the most. Again, that's why it's so difficult to compete with a liberal ideology, but we must compete with it because ultimately their system of governance is no system at all. It's not based on any real foundations. It's based on some, you know, ever-present fight against injustice, but they never define injustice, and they never define when inequality is solved, that there's always a revolution that's needed. And I appreciate that kind of thinking in an activist setting. In a democracy, I think that's important for people to have that sort of that sense. But it's wholly inadequate to actually govern a country when you do have to think about things like a budget, when you do have to think about things like states' rights and limiting principles and freedom of the individual. These are really important things. You can't just trample over these principles to just kind of to have that sort of feel-good measure that gets you more votes.
Yeah, you know, it started when people started making proclamations like no child left behind, or no child should ever go to bed hungry, or zero tolerance for X, Y, and Z. You know, when can we open Los Angeles? When can we open up California? When it is 100% safe, when we know that no human will die. Because it's like, I don't know. First off, this is the opposite of governing. This is not governing. This is you being a fucking nanny. You spinning yarns about it being 100% safe. It's never going to be 100% safe. What you're supposed to do is balance. How many people are getting addicted to opioids? How many kids are being abused? How many wives are being abused? How many people are consuming tons of alcohol? How many people's businesses are going under? How many people are sliding into depression, suicide? Factor all that in, and then come up with a plan. Don't give me your zero policy. That's bullshit. And I can't believe that this many people buy into this bullshit. That's the saddest part to me. It's not the politicians. They're just farting this shit out trying to get a vote. I get it. Who thinks this is what they're going to do? And is there anything to lead you believe that that's what they are doing or will do or can do? All I know is I live in Los Angeles. We have the LA Unified School District. It fails. It doesn't work. What are we talking about here? And all I know is you guys say you need more money to fix it. That doesn't sound like a plan. You're the guys who wrote it into the ground. Sorry, go ahead.
It's infuriating. And like, so there's this sense on the left that there's just unlimited amount of resources and goods and services that can be provided to voters for free if only politicians would let it happen. Right. You know, just like that, just snap your fingers. And the only possible reason that you would want to prevent that kind of giveaway is because you're an evil person and you just hate poor people. I mean, that's literally their message. Like, I mean, and I totally agree with you. What infuriates me the most is that it actually works.
Well, let me jump in. If in fact you do hate poor people, then this is how you would treat them. You would give them a bunch of free stuff, promise them more free stuff, and watch them be destroyed.
Right.
If you care about poor people, you want to see them go to work. You want them to see them have pride. You want them to have that dignity. Go ahead.
Yeah, the way I describe that, man, we're in sync, Adam.
I told you.
But here's a better way to put what you just said. I'm going to improve upon it a little bit. Think about how you raise your kids, because all liberals and conservatives raise their kids. The good parents raise their kids the same way. They give their kids some kind of parameters, some kind of rules. They tell their kids that if they work hard, they'll get this. There's a reward for it. But if they screw up, there's consequences for it. They teach them accountability. They teach them to be respectful and good-natured. Maybe they even bring them to church, I hope. But that's what you teach your kids. Okay, you teach them that sense of accountability. You teach them that their actions matter and that they have some control over their destiny. You teach them that because you love them and you want them to succeed. So the question is, why would you treat the American people any differently than that? Why would you treat them like you don't love them? You know,
I'll go one deeper. If you had a kid and the kid was confined to a wheelchair, would you convince that child that life was going to be hell on earth and they could never succeed? Or would you explain to them that they're going to have to work twice as hard, but they could have a great life even with this handicap? So this notion of, because what I'm saying is of course there's people who start lower down than other people. that example is true throughout every society that's ever existed and shall always be true. The only difference now is now we're telling the person that started in the wheelchair that they can't succeed, even though we have handicap ramps everywhere, tons of examples of handicapped people working and thriving and having great lives and families. We're still feeding them this pablum. And the worst thing you could do with a kid with a disability is to keep harping on the disability and explain that's why they're not going to succeed. So,
Yeah.
and by the way, no one on the left, and I do a distinction between the left and the liberals. All the things I hate are on the left. Liberals, I don't feel that way. But why you wouldn't do that with your own kid? Why are you doing it with whole groups of members of our society?
Right. And they also are very tricky in explaining this too. They make people believe that we just don't have any system in place already. They make people believe that there's no program to help this person. There's no safety net. And it's like, wait a second, let's look at the numbers here. There's excessively generous safety nets. And those safety nets have been increasing rapidly throughout our history. They're not going, they've never gone down, they've gone up. And our spending on these kind of entitlements is enormous. And when we should really be asking what's working and what isn't, what kind of incentives are in place to get people ahead. What we should be asking is things like, well, why does it take this many hours to become a hairdresser? What about our occupational licensing? Why is it so hard to start a business in California? Why is it when I talk to developers that it's 4 times as expensive to develop an apartment complex in California as it is in Texas? You know, in Texas, we don't really have this housing crisis, okay?
Right.
There is in California. Right. Why is that? Well, development costs, regulations. It takes them, they can't even get a permit to buy it. So don't complain about this stuff. And if you are going to complain about it, complain to at least elect different people who are offering the right solutions. But you know, it's very interesting for me to talk to especially millennials in California who really know that their tax dollars are being wasted. They know this. They don't like the policies, but they'll still continue to vote for these same politicians, mostly because, you know, I don't know, out of some kind of like social issue, perhaps. So it's not logical, frankly. And I could go into a lot of detail why I don't think that's logical, but it's why it's not changing. And I don't know, maybe California will hit this tipping point, but I don't know. You guys are losing more Republicans than gaining them. You have more Republicans than any other state in the country, but those Republicans are leaving. And they're coming here, which I'm happy about.
Yeah, California's just going to have to bottom out. It like an alcoholic or a junkie. It's just going to have to be in their bathrobe, busting their kids' piggy bank open to get money to buy another bottle of malt liquor and look at itself in the mirror and go, what have I become? Right. That's what California has.
I hope not. I love California. I lived there for 10 years. It's San Diego, I think, is a well-run city. I see no evidence to the contrary. It's also somewhat more conservative. I believe the mayor is actually Republican. You know, a California version of Republican. And so I just have I always want to caveat it. Like, I have a lot of love for California.
I do too. And that's why it stings that much more, seeing what's happening out here. I'm going to be at the Houston Improv May 23rd. I think we can't perform here in California, but I think I'm going to do a show there for healthcare workers and first responders and all that. And
that'd be awesome.
How far away is the Houston Improv from where you reside?
I don't know where Houston Improv is. It sounds like something that would probably be downtown, which I'm in Houston, so I'm close. I'm close to wherever it is. It's
not, as I recall, it's not too far away from Cowboys or Texas Stadium, because I remember going down there.
Yeah,
and I had a 20-minute drive to the stadium or something like that.
Yeah, so it's going to be close. Yeah,
it'll be
gonna be close. We don't have the Cowboys down here. Those are fighting words. And we have the Texans.
Yeah, the Texans. But I was at the Houston Improv, and we drove to take a tour of the Cowboys Stadium. That's what
up in Dallas. So
yeah, if you want to come out and join me, that would be awesome.
Well, I'm a famed comedian after my experience on Saturday Night Live. Some say the coolest story from that moment. I don't even think this is in the book. Maybe is it? I can't remember now. But Steven Spielberg was behind the scenes, and he actually gave me a compliment. And he said, "You've got great comedic timing. You could have a real feature in Hollywood." And I was like, "That couldn't have come from a better person to have Steven Spielberg give you a compliment like that." And
I was very impressed when I saw it. You go over some of it in the book, not the Spielberg part, but the part where, politicians can be a little stilted sometimes, and sometimes even another knock is like kind of veterans and military guys. They're not the creative types per se.
Right.
And you just knocked it out of the ballpark on that. Yeah, we're going to reopen the improv in Houston coming up on the 23rd. So maybe Dan can come out there.
That'd be awesome.
Join
That'd be
me.
awesome. I'll get back with you really soon on that. I mean, our schedule's a little in flux, but I would love to go from here.
Fortitude is the name of the book, American Resilience in the Era of Outrage. Get it and read it with your kids. It's not a political book. There's a couple political ideas in there, but it's really about what it takes. It's uniquely American. Dan is uniquely American, but it's sort of, here are the tools you need to excel in this country as we know it. All the things you discuss are all the things I've ever discussed with everyone all the time. And it is a tool to be used for success, really whatever age you're at. But if you can get this info to a younger person, it's going to help them lead a better life. Thanks, Dan.
Really appreciate that, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Very strong. All right. So I want to thank Michael Imperioli for coming in here, and Gina Grad, and Bryan, and Dan Crenshaw. And you can go check out my stand-up on our YouTube page, and you can pre-order my book, I'm Your Emotional Support Animal, which is coming out soon. You can pre-order it on Amazon. Thanks, Dan Crenshaw. I do appreciate it. I hope we'll see you in Houston on the 23rd.